In this session, I want to share with you my number one tip for creating a good spreadsheet. And it starts before you even start. Most beginners might find this counterintuitive, but if you've ever heard the phrase work smarter, not harder, it definitely applies in this case. So here's the tip. Initially, you want to organize your sheets not based on what results you're wanting to view, but rather on what data structure you currently have. So what the heck does that mean? Well, I'm going to break it down for you. Let's use the example of an expense log. You might want to be able to view your expenses on a month-to-month basis. For example, compare January to March. You might want to be able to break it down by category and compare your utility expenses against your car expenses, that type of thing. And it can be very natural to want to create a separate sheet for each of those types of categories. So you might think I'll make a January, February, March, and so on. Or you might think I'll make a 2025, 2026, and so on. And what I'm recommending is that you don't do that. After years of experience, what I have learned is the best approach to take is to create the sheets based on where you're getting the information. So in an expense record, you might be using your bank statement, your credit card statements, or maybe some manual entry for some cash expenses. Those would be your three sheets that you want to start off with. So we'll start by creating a sheet for your bank statement. Take a look at your bank statement, how it's formatted, what data is provided, and create your spreadsheet to match these columns and rows the same way it is presented to you. That way, you can just copy and paste the entire thing and put it into your spreadsheet. You don't want to have to manually enter all of this data every single time. If you find yourself copying information from an already existing data source, you've given yourself more work than you need to. If you're breaking your data out into sheets because that's the way you want to view it at the end, you're giving yourself more work than you have to. Let the spreadsheet tool do all of that work for you. Simply create a place to copy and paste that data, and then we'll work later on generating a way to view that data the way you want to see it. Now, we're not going to create a separate sheet for each and every bank statement. Rather, we're going to use the single sheet that we've formatted to match our bank statement for each and every one that comes in. So when the next month's bank statement comes in, we copy and paste it and we put it at the bottom of the existing data and just keep one continuous tally. We can do the same thing from each of our credit cards or whatever other type of data you're using. The idea is you're going to build up on that same sheet and then let the tool break those down into all the different ways we want to view, analyze, and chart that data. So now if we create a credit card statement sheet, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to look at the way your credit card statement is organized and create columns and rows that match that data in the same order so that you can just copy and paste that information into your sheet. Now, if your credit card statement and your bank statement are exactly the same format, put them all in the same sheet. But if they're not, I advise you to keep them separate. Don't give yourself the work of having to figure out, oh, this goes in this column, or this goes over here, or this doesn't exist on this sheet, but it does on this. Just set those sheets up once and for all. And then we can create a manual entry. The cash entry is the same way. Whatever information we need, like a date, an amount, what it was for, a category. We're going to dive more into categories and some cool ways to set these up in future videos. But the idea here is to think ahead of time about how you want to organize the data that you have, the information that you have, and make it as easy as possible to drop that into your spreadsheet. And then we will let the tool do the work to show us what we want to see in the way we want to see it as we move forward. Now, this does lead us to the one important exception to the rule, and that is if you anticipate collecting more than 1 million rows worth of data if you're using Excel, and more than 10 million total cells of data, meaning your rows and your columns combined in Google Sheets, then you're going to want to break it down into smaller chunks. So if, for example, you anticipate within a year you won't have over 1 million, but over the next couple of years you would, then perhaps you do a bank statements from 2025, bank statements from 2026. The other thing that you could do is just accumulate all on the same sheet until you reach that limit of 1 million plus rows in Excel, or the 10 million cells in Sheets, and then create a second sheet to pull from. But if you think of this restriction ahead of time, you might pick up on a good way, a good place to break that down into slightly smaller chunks. So this is only going to apply if you're dealing in very large quantities of data. If you're going to be under those restrictions and those limits for that sheet over the course of the time that you're utilizing and collecting the data, then I would keep it all in the same sheet. Once we've created our sheets for the source data, we'll create a separate sheet that will show us our totals or our charts or our breakdowns, whatever we want to view. That will be handled separately, and I'll cover that topic in future videos.